Hey, everybody. This is Nevin Gusak, your host of the Politically Homeless podcast, and I wanted to do another live stream. I want to thank the so far 25 people for subscribing to my newsletter, Wilderness of Mirrors, which is on Substack. I definitely appreciate that very, very much. I'm going to drop the links for those of you who are listening to the podcast. And those of you who have not subscribed and feel that it's something of interest, I definitely want to drop that in there. So I'm doing that right now for everyone. I'm going to drop that link in the chat. Um, so I got that here. And yep, okay, so we should be good to go. Okay, so feel free to subscribe. But one of the reasons why I am having this discussion, not only to, of course, thank the viewers who have also subscribed, all 25 of you, to my online newsletter, but there were a few people who have expressed concerns here and there, one on Twitter and another privately to me, uh, where they claim in one form or another that I'm anti-capitalist. And I thought I had made this kind of clear on my program, but I know people can maybe interpret me not correctly, I would argue, or for whatever reason. And look, people are entitled to their opinion. I respect it, especially if you're respectful to me. One of the individuals was very respectful to me, the other one, not entirely. The gentleman on Twitter who is excellent, posts a lot of excellent information about Russia and China, and has really a good picture of the revelations of Major Golitsyn. And I actually even saw one of his pieces. Which was very well written as mine, maybe even better than mine. And that's a fellow by the name of H.L. Schenken. I'm not going to give real names of people because that's unfair. I don't want to break trusts or anything. And the reason why I'm mentioning this individual is that he posted publicly on Twitter, which is certainly his right. And he indicated that he was very disappointed in me because I looked through things through class. And I think social class is a major dividing line in America. And that is not a good thing. Now, I am not for equality of outcomes. That is impossible and it's undesirable. Uh, However, I am for as much as possible complete equality of opportunity. I am for pre Reagan capitalism. What is that? That is where you have a system of tariffs. You don't have open borders, particularly the use of foreign workers to undercut the wages and salaries of American workers. And a portion of those foreign workers down here in Florida that work in the agricultural, in the farms, for example, in agriculture, in many ways are mistreated very, very badly, even treated like slaves. Or H-1B visa workers are underpaid compared to their American counterparts, or their American counterparts are fired and replaced by these H-1B visa workers. So when you're undercutting American labor, whether you're trading with Russia or China or any other enemy, geopolitical adversary of the United States, if you're engaged in stock buybacks and leverage buyouts or private equity, where you're basically leveraging the assets of the country, of a company or companies, loading it up with debt, decreasing the quality of services, stripping the assets, and then basically just spitting it out and firing a lot of loyal employees. If you take objection or exception to me opposing that, then I guess, yes, I'm anti-capitalist, by a very strict laissez-faire or libertarian definition. I'm not an advocate of laissez-faire liberalism. I'm not an advocate of Reaganomics, but I'm not an advocate of Marxism or socialism or Nazism or communism. I don't believe that wealth should be redistributed because I innately think the very existence of billionaires or millionaires are bad. I don't agree with that at all. I believe in pre-Reagan capitalism where stock buybacks were illegal, where the Glass-Steagall Act was in effect where you had a firewall that separated investment banking and commercial banking. I aim for a very strong anti-communist or non-communist labor unions that are genuinely educated about the need for investors and the need for free enterprise and why that is. And all the flawed systems, capitalism and free enterprise, when properly managed, controlled, is the best system there is out there in history so far. So, you know, I'm for the model of capitalism which used to exist in this country, and there are still companies that practice this at many levels, still to be sure, where there's mutual loyalty. And it has to be always a two-way street. The worker has to be loyal and come on time as much as I can and do hard work and be diligent. And if amongst the more superior workers, even be innovative or extremely productive in some form or another. The average worker is the same thing. And if you're a worker that just does not want to work, or you have legitimately a bad attitude, like an actual bad attitude, or you're lazy or whatever, then the employer should have the right to discipline you, and then if need be also separate you from from employment. A job should not be an absolute right. But when you get into the situation, into an economic model of capitalism where you just say, okay, just in order to boost majority shareholder quarterly profits, so we're just going to fire or lay off people just because of that, and you're laying off good employees, well, that's not good, because you're firing people. They do not necessarily have the ability to consume and buy goods and services and save money or invest money or create families and whatnot. And then I would also antagonize these workers who are also voters against capitalism. They'll be receptive to left-wing or socialist propaganda that says that capitalism is property is theft, capitalism is theft. They'll buy into the labor theory of value and other Marxist dogma, and they'll be like, okay, the heck with capitalism, I want to overthrow it. So if there's a real economic downturn, you're going to see the number of these socialist and communist organizations grow in membership numbers, and that's what's happening right now. And certainly with the polls for the past at least 5 to 10 years, you have an increasing number of younger Americans that are embracing socialism and communism, and that's a bad thing in my view. But it should be understood as, it is an expected reaction when you have a certain type of capitalism that really is screwing over people. Like what I had talked about, all about share buybacks, leverage buyouts tied in with private equity, the outsourcing of production, not only overseas by decimating communities, but also the outsourcing of production to countries like Russia and China, and past and present, that are a geopolitical enemy, who are the gravediggers of capitalism. So the type of capitalism I'm for is many of the people that I met when I was active with the transpartisan anti-free trade group called the Coalition for a Prosperous America. I met a number of business people there, people like the owner of Revere Copper, for example, and other manufacturers, both small and mid-level manufacturers, some of whom are on my Facebook page. And to be perfectly honest, they got trappings of wealth and nice cars, and they do very well, and they're very resilient. And very hardworking and connected to their business, because you have to understand, many entrepreneurs and executives at the same token agree or disagree with their decisions. You have to be married to your business 24/7. That is your ship that you have to navigate through, at times, stormy waters, and many different things are coming at you all at once. And this is where there has to be genuine education, genuine economic education, I would argue, for high schoolers, obviously, where people have to understand the value of the entrepreneur, investor, and the property owner. They also have to have an understanding and appreciation of the important role played by the worker, that if it wasn't for decently compensated workers, the person's money or property and investments is going to be absolutely meaningless. It's just going to sit there and just rot away, if you will. And then the importance of well compensated consumers, people who have disposable income. And I'm not talking about credit cards and loans and things of that nature. I'm talking about actual uh, decent disposable living wages. And what I'm saying now used to not be controversial in this country when we believed in demand side economics, or sometimes what's called Keynesianism and whatnot. And unfortunately, that fell into disrepute. Unfortunately, they did not make their case in the 1970s during the time of inflation, which was really set off more by the Arab oil embargo of 1973 and 1974, which really sent a shock throughout Western economies, including the United States. And the advocates of demand side economics really did not make a good case for themselves to really fend off the well funded economists ensconced in the Mont Pelerin Society, who were libertarian free market globalists. And there are things I agree, and I have libertarian tendencies. If the right incentives are put back into capitalism, I am for, to a degree, legitimate regulatory reform. My view on taxes is as high as needed, but as low as possible. I like the idea of people keeping their own money, but I also investing that money. But at the same time, there are numerous services that really the private sector has not done well, like, for example, charter schools and school vouchers, which is mixed results at best, but it really has not caused the improvement of public schools. When you take a look at fire department, police, national defense, libraries, even health insurance, which is predicated on maximizing shareholder value and not improving the health of the patients. And these are things that the market has not always done very well, or has opened up the door to a lot of corruption and legitimate profiteering. I don't say legitimate that it's good, like it was legitimately it's profiteering. And that needs to be addressed, if you will. But many other sectors, most sectors need to be left, economic sectors need to be left into the private hands. I firmly believe that. So I don't view myself as a socialist. Now, the other individual, and this individual, I'm not going to mention any names because that individual privately contacted me. And this is somebody who is a lot closer to me, who I hold in high regard. And the individual on the midst of this said that they held me in very high regard, more on a personal level. And that particular individual mentioned that they stopped listening to my YouTube channel because I'm against that. I don't like capitalism. Of course, I corrected the record, and the individual did a thumbs up in my text message, which I appreciated. I doubt they resubscribed to my channel or started to listen again, but that's their choice, and I respect it either way. And yeah, I like capitalism. I think it's the best system out there out of all the flawed systems, particularly the authoritarian command economy systems. It's clearly superior. Capitalism and free enterprise and private property is more consonant with and consistent with human nature. Human beings want to develop new products and services and better themselves and acquire property and money and pursue their own self-interest. But we also have to have guardrails against where this pursuit of self-interest clearly harms the national security interests of the United States, or really just wreaks havoc on the economy. And it's really about things like that don't help the country and the economy, really, like private equity and leverage buyouts. Just look at the case of Eddie Lampert, the former CEO of Sears, how he just trashed that company. Or you look at Al Dunlop, who is the former CEO of Sunbeam, for example, which used to make kitchen appliances. So, I look at that and, that kind of capitalism of the Al Dunlaps and the Eddie Lamberts, and in many aspects in the hedge funds and, that type of industry, I am more deeply skeptical about. And, I want to make that clear to y'all. So, again, that's my stance on capitalism. I know a long time ago, I think the first year of this podcast in 2021. I believe I addressed this, but I think it's definitely high time that I address this again, because there were some people that didn't like it, and they're not crazy about some of my ideas. And yeah, it was kind of disappointing because one of the individuals seemed like he was a Trump supporter and liked Trump because he took a very, very strong stand against the unfair free trade agreements. And I thought was really this individual, the first individual I mentioned, who was very critical of me on Twitter. I also thought was on the path of being more critical of Reaganomics, but I guess I was wrong, and that's fine. And so I just wanted to appear on this program to really kind of clarify things. If you don't like my podcast, sure, you have every right to not listen to it, and can't put a gun to your head, obviously. But if you know people who do like my podcast, they like my writings, they like my approach on the issues, make sure you tell them about my Substack newsletter, Wilderness of Mirrors, as well as this particular podcast, the Politically Homeless podcast. Again, thank you all for joining me. I know there was like one person who was listening, it looked like. Whoever that is, thank you for listening. Much appreciated. And that's pretty much it. Have a great weekend. And thank you so much. Again, God bless.